latest book. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest in conversation. And this evening, my guest is Charlie Carroll, author of The Lip, which I'm going to show you here. I'll just do my introduction, which are these events are free, but if you'd like to give a donation to Libraries Unlimited, which is the charity that runs the 54 libraries and mobile libraries in Devon and Torbay, there is a link in the chat. And we are also posting to our other to over 20 libraries from Churston to Crediton this evening. So hello to all the other libraries who are watching. If you'd like to ask a question, please pop in the chat and I will ask Charlie. So Charlie is an author of 3 non-fiction books, The Friendship Highway, No Fixed Abode, and On the Edge. And he has twice won the Cade Lundell Trust Award for writers over 40 who aim to raise social awareness with their writing. And sorry, I'm getting muddled now. His debut, The Lip, is out now. So hi, Charlie. Thank you for joining us this evening. Would you like to tell us about The Lip?
Sure, yeah. Hi, and thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure. So The Lip, like you said, it's my first novel, and it's set where I'm from. It's set in Cornwall, specifically on on Cornwall's north coast, and it's a fictional setting there, which I've called Bones Break. Bones Break is a very, very small place. So really there's nothing there at all except for the ocean and some stark and imposing cliffs, and then a cafe. And the cafe is owned and run by the Rowe family. And The Lip tells the story of the Rowe family, but principally of the 19-year-old daughter, Melody Janie, who sees herself very much as the protector and the custodian of her land, of Bones Break. And so she spends her days hiding and spying on the passing ramblers and tourists who walk along the southwest coast path. But really she does that to distract herself from the tragedies that haunt both her and her family. And it's only when a stranger arrives in Bones Break that she's forced to confront these tragedies and come to terms with them.
It's an amazing book. I finished it last night, and Melody Janie is she's such an incredible character to write. And what sort of made you write her story? Was she based on somebody that you knew, or was it sort of a multiple things that made you write her story?
No, she's totally fictional. So, but she did begin it all. So before there was any story, before there was even a setting, before I knew it was going to be in Cornwall, it really did. Well, in fact, it started with a name. So going right back to the early 2000s, there was this spate at the time of junk emails that I think were probably the very first example of entirely computer-generated content. And my Hotmail inbox just got full of them for months and months on end. And you could tell they were computer-generated because the body of the email was just totally nonsensical. But also the names that they came from, the sender names, are also kind of like these just sort of wildly incompatible names that have been smashed together. So I got one I remember from Fortune Norwich, another from Mother Coconuts, but one in particular which always stuck with me was from Melody Janie. And I just remember thinking at the time that it was the most gorgeous name I'd ever heard. I had no idea why, but it really did stick with me to such an extent that genuinely, like 10 years later, I was walking along the north coast of Cornwall to generate material for my second book, No Fixed Abode.
Yeah.
And I'd been walking all day, and I was it was like the fourth or the fifth day. I was absolutely knackered. And I came to this part of the north coast, which is notoriously wild and elemental, with these enormous cliffs, and at the time as well there were these kind of crashing waves rolling in from the ocean. And I think I was a little bit out of it at the time, because I just had this sort of this image, this vision of a woman standing on the lip, on the very edge of the cliff top, staring out to sea. And she had this long, dark, straight hair, a long flowing dress, and bare feet. And crucially, she was completely alone. And I just remember thinking at the time, well, that's Melody Janie. That's her. And I know exactly what I was doing now. Now that I look back on it, I realized I had just before read The French Lieutenant's Woman. And so I was totally channeling that iconic image of the French two lieutenants
Yeah.
on the Lyme Regis breakwater staring out to sea. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought it was some divine revelation. But it was great because suddenly I had this character and I had a setting as well, this specific part of the coast path, which later became Bones Break. And really the story, the novel, it all blossomed from that.
No, I mean, I love the North Cornish coast, but it is really bleak in places, isn't it? I mean, not so much in the summer, but in the winter when, you know, you only have to drive there in the summer, don't you? And you see all the trees sort of like leaning over, and I love that. I think it's lovely, but I really could imagine myself in that place. So is it based on a real place, or is it sort of a merged sort of
It is actually, yeah, it's all based on completely true and genuine locations within Cornwall, but all the names have been changed.
I was trying to guess some of them.
Well, yeah, well,
Yeah.
I don't know whether to reveal it. I think I'm going to keep it secret for now, but that might change. Like later on, I might decide, no, actually I will say, because Bones Break is based on a certain place, and then Petherick is a village in Cornwall, just slightly down the coast from it. Llantowarth is another. There's a large beach as well, just slightly the other way down the coast. But at the moment, I'm keeping tight-lipped about it because it was something my publisher said. She said that because the cafe that Melody Janie's family runs, that is based on a real cafe. Well, they might not quite like the depiction of it. It's this kind of decrepit, moldy, falling to bits shack. Yeah. So for that alone, they might not let me in again if I say what it is, and it's really nice. I like it there. So I think
it does that. Yeah, that makes me want to go and find it now, because it well, not that one, not her cafe, because like you say, I didn't really want to eat there with the food there is leaves a bit to the imagination as well. the dad's cuisine is
absolutely Trevelyan's harebrained ideas.
Cornish chow mein with his beef noodles.
Yeah, absolutely, with the little chopsticks with the Cornish piskies painted on them. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing Trev's strange ideas for the cafe. I mean,
the thing is with Melody is you can't help but feel empathy for her. She's had such a troubled life, and everything she knows has gone, hasn't it? Her, without giving away too much. I mean, it sort of happens quite quickly anyway in the novel. You only really need to go, well, not all of it, but yeah, I think. But the book deals with some really difficult themes, like mental health, suicide, murder, loneliness. And you do that really sensitively. Was it difficult to write some of the themes? Because obviously, she does really go through the mill.
Yeah, it really was. Absolutely. So I've always been really drawn to the marginalized when I write, and all of my nonfiction has been about, people who I think maybe don't really get so much of a voice in literature and media in general. So I've written books about homelessness, about schools in deprived areas. And even though this was my first novel, I didn't want to lose that element, because I think fiction can be just as truthful and just as powerful at conveying a message as nonfiction can. And one of the things that I really wanted to do from the very outset was to display and explore and hopefully illuminate mental health issues. So I decided very early on that I wanted to have a character in the novel who had a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. And I should thank you, by the way, for being very coy about not saying too much about the book, because I think it is one of those books that's the less you know, the better when you go into it. But I don't think it gives too much away to say that the mother character has a mental health disorder. So I remember that when I started, I didn't want it to just be this kind of faceless collection of symptoms which were just there to drive the plot along. I didn't want the mental health disorder just to be a narrative device. I wanted it to be something real. And actually, I never name it in the novel. It's never said what the mother has. But I had a very clear idea in my head before of what it was. So I can say it. It's something that's called schizoaffective disorder. which is something that kind of couples many of the symptoms of schizophrenia with many of the symptoms with bipolar disorder. So things like visual and auditory hallucinations, impaired communication, that sort of thing. And I spent a long time reading into that and researching it to really try and make sure that that I did portray it. I think the word you used was sensitively, and that's exactly what I was going for.
Well, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because you don't, I think if you're going to write about something like that, I sort of, in my opinion, I feel that you need to know it, because otherwise, you know, it's not something that you can be sort of blasé about, is it? You need to know. And as you say, you don't say in the book, but it was obvious that it was quite a severe mental disorder that she was suffering from. And it was really sad, because, you know, she when she was well, she was very aware that she was, you know, that she was well, and when she was going to be unwell. But I think Melody Janie grows up with that, doesn't she? She grows up as almost being, she's not a carer, but then she is a sort of carer in a way, because obviously when Trev's around, he obviously sort of looks after her, and she ends up in the centre quite a bit, doesn't she? So but yeah, it's really, I think you did cover it. And I think there's so many things, like I say, the loneliness that Melody Janie experiences in her life it's quite hard to write that in the way that you did. It's so obvious. I think that's when it's written in the first person, it becomes more personal, doesn't it? It's more real, because it's like she's telling you her story.
Yeah, with the loneliness thing was interesting, because obviously it's something that over this last year has become a major part of all our lives. But this was written way before we even knew what COVID-19 was. So the first draft was written in 2017. And
oh, really? Wow.
I think I signed the contract with my publisher in October 2019. So yeah, COVID-19 was very much in the distance at that point. And it kind of, when it became clear to me that this was going to come out during a lockdown, I was sort of in two minds about it, because I did think, well, you know, the themes within this, so things like mental health, loneliness, isolation, they're themes which we're all experiencing all the time at the moment. And maybe it's something that people just don't want to read about right now. You know, maybe they want literature to escape what's going on rather than emphasize it. But then the other part of me thought, well, in a way, I think it's made Melody Janie much more of a relatable character.
Yeah.
I think pre-pandemic, probably she would seem quite alien to a lot of people. But now I think in the same way that we've become much more, we're able to relate much more to those people who experience loneliness as a matter of their everyday lives, you know, older people or some people with disabilities or mental health issues. In the same way we can relate to them and empathize with them more, we can walk a mile in their boots more. Hopefully the reader can do that more with Melody Janie as well now.
I think you're right. I think we have all had to get used to that. Like you say, some people may not have, you know, some people may be very lucky and may never have experienced loneliness before. But actually, I think this year has demonstrated to us all that, you know, anybody can be lonely, and you know.
Yeah, it's not just a flippant point. It is a real issue that can affect people very gravely.
Yeah,
it's something that does need to be taken very seriously.
I'm just going to plug my headphones in, because a Tesco's van has just pulled up outside my house. And I can hear it making, and I bet it's going to start clanking doors. So this is the trouble with live. So yes, so Melody Janie really hates the emmets, doesn't she? So for those people who don't know what an emmet is, I did know what an emmet was because I had a Cornish friend. We call them grockles in Devon.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
So they are. That's the locals' name for holidaymakers. And she really hates them. And do you think that's, I mean, her dad did, obviously, didn't he, as well? Her dad it's sort of, I felt like it was a learnt behaviour from her dad, is like that she was, you know, he basically had scared her into hating them because they were going to come and take over the land. And that's sort of really what drives her, isn't it, in the sort of, in the book, that she's got to look after her land and save it from the emmets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she protects that land. She's the guardian of it, and it is the opinions and the attitudes she has. They do come from her upbringing and the things that her father ingrained in her. And she's certainly an extreme example of the prejudice towards
Mhm.
outsiders. But in a way, it does reflect, maybe not quite exactly how people feel, but it does reflect a sentiment down here about the resentment and the worry of
Yeah.
the incursions of people who do come to Cornwall. And I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about, like, that word Emmet, which you picked up on. Obviously, it's a derogatory and derisory word.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it really equates to other slurs that people might use for different groups of people. Because I think the key thing with the word Emmet is it's not something which is used to punch down, it's used to punch up. So I think when the Cornish, when we look at people who come down here and have an impact upon the county, which sorry, I shouldn't say county, the duchy, which could be considered negative. I think those people there, they see the income as almost as higher status than themselves, almost always richer than we are anyway.
Mm.
And certainly the prevailing feeling, it's not so much towards the holidaymakers or the tourists, because we know we need them,
Yeah.
and they're a vital part of this economy. And it's not really directed either at the people who buy their homes and come down here and live here and contribute to the economy and the community. Really, it's directed at the people who own the second homes down here.
Mm.
And I imagine that's probably a bit of an issue where you're from as well, another beauty spot of the UK.
Yeah, I think.
It's sorry, go
Yeah,
on.
I was going to just say that I was going to ask you about that you grew up in Cornwall, and you obviously must have seen it change dramatically over the years, particularly with the sort of influx of second homeowners. Because I grew up in Devon, and it wasn't really a thing that people had two homes. People had one home, and it's only been sort of, probably what, last 20 years that it's probably in the last 10 is it's really thinking about places. There's still pockets of Cornwall, isn't there, and the same with Devon, that are not as desirable as your St Ives and your Padstows and those places. So yeah, I think we've got areas of particularly around the coast, I think, and that's the same, isn't it? Is when you go inland, people are not maybe so keen to live on the inland as they are.
I was saying that so it is the fact that everyone wants a sea view, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It's really just the last couple of decades that, I mean, the biggest impact it's had has been on the house prices, which is just astonishing, how much they've shot up over the last 20 years. And of course, that's had a big part of that is because of the second home culture. It has pushed these house prices up, and it's almost impossible now, particularly for younger people, to buy properties in Cornwall. And so you've got these little seaside villages where families have lived for generations, and now the youngest generation, they can't afford to stay in those villages anymore because all the house prices have been pushed up, and so they are being squeezed out into these less desirable, like you say, less desirable parts of Cornwall, which, I mean, they're still Cornwall, so they're still great, but they're probably not the first choice. They're not where these people would want to live. They'd want to stay in the places which many of them quite rightfully see as their birthright. And I think the biggest problem is that, we do have such an issue of poverty down here, and I don't think that's really so well known from outside of Cornwall. I think a lot of people do look down here and do see the quite idyllic and quite romanticized view that shows like Doc Martin, for example.
Well, Port Isaac's really another place, isn't it, that's very, very expensive to if you can afford to live there. I mean, again, it has a lot of second homes and holiday lets, and
Yeah, absolutely. And to an extent, they do portray some of Cornwall, but not really all of it. They certainly don't portray the poverty that is endemic down here.
Mm.
I don't think there's anywhere else in the UK which has such a wide disparity between the average house price and the average living wage. So really going back to Melody Janie and her prejudice, really that's what it stems
Mm.
from, and that's what her father's prejudice stems from. It's not. She wrestles with how she feels about the tourists because her family own a cafe which
Yeah.
relies solely on passing trade. So she knows that they wouldn't survive without tourism, without that industry. But she also, so one of my favorite scenes to write in the book was the nearby village of Petherick has this estate which has been tacked onto it, which
Yeah.
is almost exclusively, it's kind of been purpose built for holiday lets and second homes.
Mm.
And she walks through there, and because it's the end of the season, it's the beginning of the winter, the place is just deserted, and she can imagine that she's almost the last person on earth that she's walking through. And that's not far removed from reality at all. There's many places down here where you can go to in the winter and it's just door-to-door holiday lets, and it's like a ghost town. It's like walking through a ghost town in the winter, and there's a real emptiness and desolation and a sadness to it as well.
I think, I mean, particularly because obviously that's, like you said, the conflict of the tourism, and also so that, for the summer months they bring the money in, and then for the winter it's really tough, and there's no work, and she has the work because they've bought the cafe and things, but that's not because they're rich, is it? It's just because something happens and they're able to buy the cafe, and it's also because of the mum's always wanted to have a cafe, and the dad wants to help her. And because you grew up in Cornwall, did you want to escape there as a young person? I know that I didn't appreciate Devon until I was older. And I know friends of mine who've come from Cornwall and have come and lived in Devon or further afield and then gone back. Were you wanted to see the world and escape from Cornwall?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't admit it, but yeah, I really did. So, I mean, I left to go to university, but that was because there wasn't a university down here at the time. So it was my only option.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have lived in a number of different places and worked in a number of different places around the country and around the world. But I do always just end up coming back to Cornwall. Just something does draw me back here. And I do feel at home here. I think this is another thing I was thinking about the other day. I was thinking, why does it feel like my home? Because I'm not particularly nationalistic or prideful in that way. And I think I realized that I just feel very well oriented here in a way that I don't anywhere else. I just know where everything is, and Cornwall is just, as a place, as a collection of geographical settings, it's stamped into my brain. So it doesn't really matter where I am. I've always got a very firm sense of being and belonging, which I've never really captured anywhere else.
No, I think I sort of recognise that. I mean, I love Cornwall, but Devon is my home, I think. So I think we won't have the Devon Cornwall argument, because obviously that's never a good one, is it?
It's a joke, isn't it? It's not.
I think it is a joke. I think so. Probably if you ask some people it isn't, but it's a joke.
I certainly don't feel that.
No. I've got a question from Serena, which is, did you always know you had a novel in you?
I didn't always know, but I always wanted, I always hoped. It was definitely something that because it's my first love, I think, when it comes to literature. It's the novel above everything else. But for a long time I was actually really scared of writing a novel, just because of how much it requires you to sustain your imagination for such tremendous levels. I didn't think I had that in me, and that's why earlier on when I was writing, I really just stayed within the realm of nonfiction, because nonfiction, it presents its own set of challenges, but it's much safer because all the material is laid out for you. You just need to curate it. So yeah, I was fearful of a novel, of writing a novel for a long time. I didn't think I would be able to do it. But then, like I said to you earlier, then the character came along and then the setting came along, and gradually a story began to bloom as well. And so I just thought, yeah, I've got to have a go at it. And right now I'm really grateful I did.
I'm really grateful you did too. Did you there's some real shockers in the book, so I'm not going to give any of them away because like you said, I think it's a really good book to not know where it's going. But did you know where the story would end, or did it change as you wrote it? So you had your character in the beginning and you had your setting, but did you know where they were going, or did they take you on their own trip?
It changed it immensely. Yeah. So once I had the character and the setting, the next thing I wanted to do, even still before the story, is I really wanted to focus on the voice. I knew that Melody Janie was going to be a really unique character, so I wanted to portray that through, reflect that through first-person prose. So it was really important for me to get the voice right. And actually, one of the first things I did, because Bones Breaker is based upon a real place, there's no houses there. And so I thought, well, you know, how's she going to live up there? So the first thing I thought was, well, she must live in a van or a caravan, which isn't that uncommon down here. Lots of young people in particular live in vans and caravans here. I've done it myself, lived in vans for years at a time. So it didn't seem too unnatural to have a person living in a caravan here. So once I'd made that decision, my stepsister, she had this beautiful little caravan. It was small and aging and full of character. So I said, can I just borrow it for a little while? Took it back and put it on my driveway. And then I would go out whenever I could and just sit in the caravan, imagine that it was Melody Janie's home, and then just write. And it didn't really matter what I wrote, just that I wrote as if I was Melody Janie. And it took a really long time to find that voice. And even when I thought I actually hadn't. I remember once I thought I'd got it, I thought I'd cracked it, and really excitedly kind of scrawled out 10,000 words, and then came back to it the following week after a bit of time away, and realized that I'd just ripped off Christopher, the narrator from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It's just exactly the same as that. So it was back to square one again. But very slowly, her voice started to emerge. And because I was writing all these different kind of standalone set pieces, the story also began to emerge from them. And a lot of them were discarded, but some things did make their way into the book. So for example, one which seems to have struck a chord with a lot of readers is the dad's Randy Spider dance. And that's something that was one of the first things that I ever wrote about Melody Janie. So they all kind of came together and permeated into the story, and which was the very last thing to happen, the story itself.
Yeah, I think I really liked her friendship with Esther, with Melody Janie's friendship with Esther, because she's the only sort of normal in her life. And although she, you know, she goes off to college, but even at school, you know, they're in the sort of group that aren't, you know, they're not in the cool kids, are they? Esther's and suffers with epilepsy, and Melody Janie is just as I said in my review, that she's just on the fringes of everything. She's always sort of just on the edge of being included.
She describes herself as neither popular or nor unpopular, just someone you never really noticed at school.
Yeah, she's, and I felt that the only time you saw, well, what I thought, I mean, obviously the real Melody is there, but you get a glimpse of what the Melody would be like if she didn't have all the trauma with her when she's with Esther. And was that friendship important for her to have?
Well, Esther was interesting because I'd say probably she did start off as a plot device. She wasn't really a well-rounded character at all, not in the same way that Melody Janie or her family were. But then as I began to write it, I really got attached to Esther, really found her a very compelling character to write, because she's got so much strength. She doesn't care. And I love that about her. And she ended up being one of my favorite things about the novel. And the more I got to explore their friendship as well, that was interesting because I used to be a teacher. I used to be a secondary school teacher for well over a decade. So it was quite nice to be able to sort of dip back into that pool and be able to draw upon all the observations that I was able to make for over 10 years in a classroom.
Like the three Lauras.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the friendships, the dynamics that happen between teenagers. It was quite nice to be able to say, all right, well, I do know that very well, because it was part of my working life for 10 years. So it was nice to be able to pull that in and insert that into the book.
No, I think she was, I really liked her. And I think you said in the, when you were introducing it, is that Esther's her only normal in life until she meets the other character in the book, which is Richard and his dog Archie, who I absolutely loved. Archie, because he enables her to grieve, really, doesn't he? He's like a sort of the counselling dogs that people have. He's the only one that she trusts to let go, and I thought he was lovely. Did you have are you a dog lover?
Yes, yeah, I am. And
I could sort of tell that from,
And in all truth, you asked earlier if Melody Janie was based on anyone real. She's not, but Archie is. He's based on a real Labradoodle called Archie, who was, unfortunately, he's passed away now, but he was the best boy. So yeah, it was fantastic to put that in. And yeah, you're absolutely right about Richard Brown. His appearance forces Melody Janie to come to terms, or at least confront, what's been happening in her life and her family's life. But it's actually Archie, I would say, who's the one who saves Melody Janie, because he's the one who shows her just unconditional love. There's a very important part where I'm struggling with how much I should say on quite near the end. But essentially, it's his presence and the fact that despite everything that's going on around him, and he's very terrified about it, he stays there just for Archie. And I think there's just one action he does. He just very gently places his nose on her leg. And it's that kind of brings everything out of her. And she realizes that, oh, actually, I can heal. I can get through this.
I think for me, the book has a hopeful ending, as much as I'm going to say. What would your hopes be for Melody? She sort of, she obviously, I'm not going to say what she does, but it's a hopeful ending. But
I think so. Yeah, I left it intentionally ambiguous. The truth is that I once heard Margaret Atwood talking about this. Someone asked her about one of her characters, and they said, what happens to them after the end of the book? What do they go on and do? And Margaret Atwood said, well, I don't know, because that's all the story I know. That's as far as I've got with it. Doesn't mean that it's ended. It's up to the reader now to decide what happens next with this person. And I feel very much the same with Melody Janie. It ended there because that was all of the story that I knew. I didn't know what was going to happen next. I still don't. And I'm quite happy to stand back from it now and to say, well, yeah, this was my little piece of this story. Doesn't mean that it's finished. If you want to continue it, then please do. Please keep thinking about Melody Janie and what's going to happen to her next. But it won't come with any of my influence anymore.
So actually, we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. It's gone so quickly.
It really has, yeah.
So I've got some I'll ask some quick fire questions. So what made you become a writer?
Oh my God, that's a good question. Well, I always really wanted to. I mean, I've always loved literature. It was my favorite subject at school and at college, and then I studied it at university, and I became an English teacher because that was a way that I could keep working with literature in my day-to-day job. But it was always there at the back of my mind. I'd always loved reading, and when I was doing my PGCE, my teacher training year, one of the roles that we had to do was we had to write a story for our year 8 class. And so I wrote this story and had so much fun doing it that I turned it into a book, a terrible book that will never see the light of day. But then I just kind of got hooked on that. So that was from about the age of 24, and I'm 40 now, and I've just kept writing all the way through. And fortunately, some things have been published. probably also, fortunately, some things have not been published as well. But yeah, it's just, I think I just always got a book on the go, in terms of I'm always writing a book at some point.
Yeah, and you've got lots that you're reading as well. I can see in the background there. I was impressed
Yeah,
with your library. It's a very,
that's it. I thought it would be apt to talk to a
yeah,
library from my little
I
library.
think that's great. So what do you like to read for pleasure? I mean, quite a lot, I can see.
Yeah. So, well, I find that question really difficult as well, because I do tend to be quite eclectic. So lately, I'll tell you what, lately I've been reading a lot of like Greek literature for some reason. A friend of mine got me onto Madeline Miller
Oh
with
yeah.
Circe, which
Oh, I
just
love Circe.
blew
It's
my mind
amazing.
how good
Yeah.
it was. So then I read the Song of Achilles as well, and then I thought, well, I've read the Odyssey, but I've never read the Iliad. So I went back to those and read those, and Stephen Fry's Mythos. So I've been kind of in that environment, in that world for a while, which has been really fun. And lately, I've also really been enjoying Marlon James. He's
Oh
the
yeah.
one who wrote I said, Brief History of Seven Killings, the
Yeah.
Booker winner from 2015, and that just absolutely knocked me out. It was like reading Salman Rushdie or Gabriel Garcia Marquez for the first time. Such a polyphony. Is that a word? Polyphony? Is that how you
I
say
don't
it?
know.
Plethora, a fruit salad
Yeah.
of different.
Plethora. Yeah. Plethora. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do. And so I got so immersed in that, and I just ended up buying all of his stuff. And I tend to, once I like a writer, I tend to just attack everything that they've ever written.
Yeah,
So
I've got friends who like Marlon James. They really rave about him.
He's incredible. Yeah, he's one of my new favorites. Yeah, sorry, that didn't really answer the question, did it?
No, that's fine. No, that's good. No, I really like the Greek. I've read Circe, and also there's Natalie Hayes, who did 1,000 Ships.
I've heard about that. Yeah, and there's a new Pat Barker book, I think, that's like I've read the Regeneration trilogy, which is brilliant.
Silence of Girls, I think there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are all ones to try and get my hands on soon.
Yeah. So this is the question that everybody hates, which is, do you have a favorite book?
Yeah, I do actually, and it made its way into the lip. It's 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's the book that I've read more times than any other, and each time I read it, I find something new within it. It's just endlessly fascinating and funny and magical, and just everything about it I adore. I wish I could write magical realism, but I know that that's something that's way beyond my scope. But yeah, I just love that book so much that, like I said, I ended up putting it into this novel.
So what's next? Is it non-fiction or fiction?
I'd love to stick with fiction for a bit. What I'd really like to do is keep writing about Cornwall in a fictional way. And I'd like to kind of, what I'm hoping to do is, in the same way that, so Irvine Welsh, she has this kind of shared fictional universe of Leaf, and all of his characters from each novel, they sort of pop up within each book. Same with David Mitchell, another of my favorites, with he calls it his Uber novel, how all of his novels connect with each other. I'd like to try and have a bit of a trilogy of sort of interconnected Cornish novels, with the Lip being the first, and to explore some of those sort of fictional spaces. Some of the characters, I've got an idea for actually Esther's family, which I'd quite like to bring into,
because they're sort of touched on, aren't they, in the book? You touch on the mother, and that's really interesting. I think I'll look at that. So have you got any sort of plans? Have you got like a deadline or anything, or are you at the moment in that sort of luxurious position that you can do it when you want?
It's all very loose at the moment. So right now, I'm just trying to enjoy everything that's going on with the Lip. It's been so lovely to see all of the reader responses and feedback that's been coming back. It's been wonderful. And I've got my day job as well. So these days I'm editing and proofreading, which is also great because I just get to spend my days working with books, which is kind of a dream come true.
That's the same as I do.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? So it's a full-time job, and I've always, except for the Lip, actually, all my other books I've written while I've had a full-time job. The other three, the non-fiction books, I wrote while I was teaching. So it's just a case of chipping away at it whenever I can, and not putting too much pressure on myself to get it done early, not to rush it. but
No.
just yeah, just to enjoy the craft of it.
Well, it's nice to be able to enjoy your sort of first novel and enjoy it before you're sort of, you know, having to do the next one, because I think, you know, sometimes people get on a bit of a sort of hamster wheel of, you know, doing one and then the next one and then the next one. So if you can do that and have a bit of a rest in between, I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're just coming up to the end. I've got Lisa says, that's all the story I know is a great quote. Maybe it could be the, you know, it could be in your next book.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie, for coming along this evening and telling us all about Melody Janie and The Lip. And the Lip is now out. It's available in the link for our friends from Crediton Bookshop, and it's also available to order from Devon and Torbay libraries. And it's a really good read, so I can totally recommend it. Our next in conversation is tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and that is with Felicia Yap, and she's talking about her latest book, Future Perfect, which is set in 2030, and it's got some scary stuff in it about drones and all the sort of things for the future, and it's a good whodunit as well. So join us if you like a good whodunit. Join us then. If you would like to know more about our details and our events, check out our Facebook page, and if you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe our page. So thank you, Charlie, for coming along again.
Thanks,
it's been
Karen.
Great to talk to you,
Thanks,
and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Take care.
Take care.
Cheers now.